Hi, everybody. Hello. Welcome. Hello. My name is Nick Carletti. I'm the organizing lead here with Fight Back Connecticut. So very, very excited to welcome everyone to our kickoff launch event today. So excited. Our volunteers have been working for the last couple of weeks to make this possible. So we're just very, very pumped to be here with all of you. We have about 80 events going on across the state with about 2,000 RSVPs. So we are so excited by the amazing response that this has gotten from really all corners of Connecticut. We're also happy to be joined by countless other people who are watching online. So thank you for everyone tuning in. We're going to be bringing on Chris in just a minute, but we are going to have a question and answer period during this event. So go ahead and tweet your questions using hashtag FightBackCT. So if you have a question for Senator Murphy, we're going to be tracking that hashtag on Twitter. So go ahead and tweet at us using hashtag FightBackCT. Because we're very excited to engage with all of these different events all across the state. So Fight Back Connecticut, we're going to talk a lot about. We're very excited. I like to highlight that this is a unique program. No other state is trying this, so we are unique, and as a state, we have a really, really great opportunity to be a voice in this conversation around what's going on in our country and what's going on in Washington. So thank you all so much for taking that step to be a part of something big and a part of something meaningful. We're very excited to be working with all of you, to help sort of advance this agenda. But yeah, you can continue to engage with us both on the live stream, on Twitter, but also go ahead and text. Text the word FIGHT, F-I-G-H-T, to 228466. So text the number 228466 with the word FIGHT to make sure that you keep up to date with our campaign in every way possible. So we're super excited for this live stream. If anything does go technically, berserk, just refresh your page. Your hosts, if you're watching at a launch event, are super, super well trained. They're all amazing people. So just make sure that you refresh the page. But we have everything covered there. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Senator Chris Murphy and Kate Altobello, who are going to talk to you a little bit more about Fight Back Connecticut. All right.
Hello, welcome to my home. I'm Kate Altobello. I met Chris in 2005 through my nephew, Anthony Salerno. They both went to Williams College. During Chris's first campaign for the House, I hosted phone banks right here. I was proud to be invited to Chris's swearing-in ceremony in DC after a successful campaign, and I'm happy to be part of kicking off this new one. Since he was elected to the Senate, Chris has worked on a lot of issues I care about. I grew up in Meriden, home of International Silver, Manning and Bowman, and Napier, three great American manufacturing companies, all of which are gone now. We need to start making things again, and we need jobs that go along with them. I'm proud of Chris's work in the Senate to advance U.S. manufacturing here in Connecticut. Chris is also leading the way on preventing gun violence, fighting to keep health care for the 24 million Americans who rely on the Affordable Care Act, and reinvesting in transportation here in Connecticut. I'm proud to call him my senator, but more proud to be
my friend.
Yes. And I consider him my second son.
Well, that's very good. Thank you, Kate. What Kate neglected to mention is that we are virtually neighbors. I am right now right around the corner from our house here in Cheshire, and during the 2012 campaign, when I was running for the United States Senate, Kate spent lots and lots of hours at our house looking after our two boys, Owen and Ryder, who many of you know. And so Kate is really, as she said, really part of the family. And though you can't see She has opened up her home today to about 20 or so Cheshire residents, people from surrounding towns who are comprising one of the 80 house parties that are happening all across the state. So Kate, thank you very much for having us here. Listen, I am so excited to have 2,000 people all across the state that have joined together for these house parties. We're going to have our own conversation here in Cheshire, but this is all a credit to you. I mean, I've been blown away that since the inauguration of President Trump, citizens all across Connecticut have organized themselves in big groups and small groups through formal organizations, Facebook groups to resist this reckless and hurtful agenda that's going to ultimately accrue to the detriment of people here in Connecticut. So when we launched Fight Back Connecticut, it wasn't to try to replicate or replace anything that you all have done. The idea was just to take the expertise that I and some of my folks have gained in running campaigns across the state of Connecticut, successful campaigns year after year, and partner with all of you to try to take this resistance movement to the next level. And so I'm going to talk about an idea that we have about how to do just that, how to be as impactful as possible this summer, trying to fight the Trump agenda and what it means for Connecticut. But first, let me give you credit where credit is due. I know that it feels like there is a gut punch every day that comes from this administration. I know that for a lot of people, it was hard to get up the day after Election Day or the day after inauguration. But I want to tell you that this resistance movement is working. It's working in ways that I see plain and clear in Washington. Remember, we're what, about 120 days into this administration, and they still haven't passed anything. They haven't actually changed a single major statute to try to do the things that Trump said he was going to do during the campaign. And the resistance movement has had some real victories. First and foremost, the bigoted, racist immigration order banning people of the Muslim faith from entering the United States has not gone into effect because courts of law have stood up and said no. That happened in part as well because of the huge outpouring of opposition that occurred all across this country. Second, they thought they were going to be done with repealing the healthcare bill by now and already on to their next agenda item, a big new trickle-down tax cut for the fabulously rich in this country. Well, they can't get healthcare done, in part because of you. In these closed-door meetings, Republicans are telling each other that they need to be really careful about how they proceed because they know they're going to lose their seats. They know that Democrats are going to be picking up huge amount of support because of the way in which they're approaching healthcare. They're stuck on healthcare because of the power of this resistance movement. And we now have a special prosecutor that is going to be overseeing the FBI investigation into the potential contact between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. And let me be honest again, though the Deputy Attorney General told us behind closed doors this week that this was not a political decision, that this was not done in response to the political and public outroar, I do believe that there would not be an independent prosecutor, a special counsel today, if it wasn't for all of you, if it wasn't for the fact that you rose up in every corner of the state, every corner of this country, and said that this administration and Congress has to do everything possible to get to the bottom of what could be a true scandal of epic proportions. So I want to tell you that what you're doing is working. Now, we can't stop everything hurtful or hateful that this administration wants to do. As you know, I spend a lot of time on foreign affairs, and as we speak, Donald Trump is in Saudi Arabia putting forth a $110 billion weapons sale to the Saudis, which will not make this country more safe, which will not make the Middle East more safe. Now, Congress has limited ability to stop that, and my worry is that more people are going to be killed inside the Middle East because of this ill-thought-out weapons sale. So we won't be able to stop everything, but we've made more progress. We've stopped more than I think anybody thought was possible. So I want to give you credit for that. And now I want to talk to you about how we take this movement to the next level and give you my big idea. So next week, there are going to be two important pieces of information that emerge. First, we are going to get Trump's first budget presented to Congress. He gave us what was called the skinny budget about a month ago, which was just some top line numbers about how he wanted to cut virtually every domestic program by 20 to 30, 40%. Next week, he's got to deliver his actual detailed budget. And it's going to be the clearest expression of the values, the backwards values of this administration, the clearest indication of how it's going to specifically hurt us here in Connecticut as we've gotten in the first 120 days. Second, we are going to get the CBO score on the American Health Care Act, the bill that passed the House of Representatives that is now pending before the United States Senate. Now, this score is not going to be any better than the last one. It's going to say that at least 24 million people, hundreds of thousands here in Connecticut, will lose their coverage. But it's also going to tell us what these new provisions mean for people with pre-existing conditions. Again, millions of them or hundreds of thousands of them living here in Connecticut. So next week, we're going to have some really important information that is going to allow us to communicate in the most detailed terms yet to voters what Trump's agenda will mean for them, for their kids, for their schools, for their health care, if the policies become law. And so it gives us an opportunity this summer. Now, everything you've done has made a difference, right? The work you've done online, the huge turnout you've had to town halls that we've held. But the piece that's been missing has been strategic, targeted swing voter contact. Now, normally that happens in the context of an election campaign. You're talking to swing voters right before somebody is up for election. We're proposing to do that this summer, to go take this information that we have about how the healthcare bill is going to affect people here in Connecticut, and about how Trump's budget, if it was enacted, is going to gut funding for schools, for housing, for environmental protection, for the state government. Take that information to a targeted group of swing voters all across this state so that they have the information necessary to make good choices when elections occur, whether it be this year or next year. By taking this information about the effect of Trump's agenda on Connecticut with really specific concrete examples, we can essentially give the information to swing voters necessary for them to support Democrats up and down the ballot when those elections occur. It'll be novel because people aren't used to folks knocking on their doors or calling them when there's not an ask for a specific candidate. So people will notice it. And let me tell you, for any of you that are skeptics about the power of direct voter contact, I'm somebody that grew up running campaigns. I started out as a campaign manager and then became a candidate. I've never lost a race. And so I follow the data, the empirical research really closely about what persuasive tools matter and what don't. Because I spend my time thinking about how many ads to run, how many internet sites to put up, where to allocate human capital. And the data shows more now than ever before, direct person-to-person contact from a volunteer is the most persuasive way to get to an undecided individual. Primarily a door-to-door contact, but following just behind a phone call. Now, some of you won't believe that because you'll say, well, I haven't made those door-to-door contacts, and it doesn't seem like people are listening to me, or yeah, I make those phone calls, but people seem busy. Even if they do, the data tells you that people are actually internalizing that information. That contact is making a difference for them, even if you don't necessarily see it at that moment. And so we're going to take that data, we're going to pair it together with a super targeted list of voters out there that will decide elections for Democrats up and down the ballot. And we're going to ask you to go to work. We're going to ask you to pick 3 weekends over the course of this summer. work with your local groups, work with your local friends to pick out which weekends work the best. We're going to ask you to have 3 weekends of action where we will give you, and we'll work together on this, the list of targeted voters in your location, the list of specific information about how Trump's actions, his budget and the healthcare bill in particular, affect local voters, and then ask you to go to work. We'll then take the data back from you. We'll put it into the voter file so that it's available for Democrats that are running up and down the ballot to know who's been contacted by Fight Back Connecticut and affiliated groups. That'll be helpful when elections come. No other state is doing this, as Nick said. We are engaging in a bit of an experiment, but we think your enthusiasm, your on-the-ground organizing that's already taken place, partnered together with my campaign's ability to target voters and deliver the best information that we have from Washington to you, could be something truly epic, something that really could help us win elections, which is, in the end, the way that we truly fight back against the Trump agenda. I'm really excited about this. I'm excited about how much enthusiasm we have just for this kickoff and this launch. I'm excited to sit down with my friends here to plan how we can put weekends of action, weekend days of action. You don't have to commit your whole Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to this project. I hope that you'll join us. It's not hard. Pick 3 weekends, maybe 1 day of 3 Saturdays throughout the summer. Work with us to find the targeted list of voters and the information to hand out. Record your interactions in a way that we can work with you to help understand. Report the data back, and believe me, I'm telling you, it will ultimately pay off and might be a model that lots of other people will follow. So with that, I'm going to take some questions from Twitter, and then we're going to ask you to go and have conversations with your groups about how you can put this into action.
So I'm going to join you. Alrighty, so everybody do go ahead and text the word FIGHT to 228466 for your next step, and we'll continue to take questions over Twitter. So this question is from Lauren from Bridgeport and from Action Together, South Fairfield County. She's asking, what are the best ways to keep momentum going through 2018 without burnout?
Well, I think some of what you need to understand is that you're seeing the victories, and I hope you understand them. I articulated some of them to you. But what we're trying to do is create a sense of molasses in Washington that makes it as hard as possible for the people who want to perpetuate this agenda to make it real. So you are in real time affecting what's happening right now. Burnout comes, I think, when you don't see the result of your actions. I just want to let you know that it's actually working. And listen, we want to pace yourselves. We want you to only take on 3 weekends this summer. I think everybody has that in them. And so pick 3 Saturdays over the course of, or 3 Sundays, whenever you want to do it. And I guarantee you that won't be too much. But if all of the people who are part of this event and many more who will join afterwards do what we're asking, boy, it'll make a really, really big impact.
At JMac wants to know how Connecticut residents can encourage accountability from their congressional majority.
Well, I mean, listen, accountability ultimately comes at the ballot box. And that's why we really want to turn this into a campaign of direct voter contact. We can do some really important things to try to jam up the agenda, and it's already happened. But there are going to be some members of Congress who are going to vote the wrong way and just take a chance when they head to the polls. It's also important to have local and state leaders who are going to work to fight this agenda. So let's say that Trump pushes through his cuts to the EPA or some portion of them. Well, then we need to make sure that we have leaders at the state level and at the local level who are going to make up that difference, who are going to maintain the state and local commitment to environmental protection. So accountability comes certainly by taking out members of Congress who vote for this agenda, but accountability also happens by making sure that we have state and local leadership who are as active as you are in fighting this agenda. That's why we want to build this ultimately as a tool that can help every Democrat who's running.
And speaking of environmental protection, Bruce from Stratford asks, any news about the EPA?
I mean, so here's where we are on the budget. So Trump's going to present a budget that is going to gut funding for the EPA, that's going to gut funding for the State Department, gut funding for education. The good news is that there still is a slim bipartisan majority in the House and the Senate to hold together funding for the EPA and the State Department. So we need you to communicate to people here in Connecticut what the impact of these cuts would be. But right now, we feel like we can hold together support in the Congress for some of the funding. The problem is that even with the funding, the administration can just make enforcement decisions that will have a huge impact on environmental quality. They can pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement. They can dramatically curtail Clean Water and Clean Air Act enforcement actions that they take. So even if we're able to preserve the funding, if they don't have the enforcement commitment there, there's still a potential real detriment to Connecticut's environment, which is why we really ultimately want to communicate that the project here will help Democrats up and down the ballot so we can make sure that we have some protection at the state and the local level if that sort of gutting of enforcement actually does occur.
All right, next question. Sorry, we're just waiting on the next question from Twitter. Sorry. Oh, there they are. There we go. All right, question from Danbury. What would you say to immigrant communities that are living in fear right now?
So first and foremost, our office is there to protect you. We are trying to sort through in real time what these new rules are for deportations. There's been a couple high-profile cases of Connecticut citizens who were here without documentation, but had families, had stakes in the community, and hadn't violated the law and were still deported. We are there as a liaison. So when you hear about these kind of situations happening, call and contact our office. Now, we are attempting to work with Republicans, the few Republicans that are sympathetic, for instance, to Dreamers, in order to pass legislation that protects these populations. But ultimately, a lot of this comes down to individual enforcement. Now, here again, the importance of making sure that this is a whole of government resistance movement. Because while ICE is run at the federal level, local law enforcement doesn't have to go above and beyond the call to coordinate with ICE. There's no obligation. There's no obligation for Bridgeport police officers to be immigration officers. So again, making sure that we are winning for Democrats up and down the ballot makes sure that these ICE officers don't have any more help than they have to have from local law enforcement.
So we're getting a couple of questions right now about registering people to vote. Do you want to speak a little bit about voter registration, a personal favorite of mine?
Yeah. Nick has a lot of experience with voter registration, having run campaigns out in the field. But yeah, this is hugely important, and we can work with you to equip you with voter registration tools so that when you are out doing this direct voter contact, you can also be doing voter registration as well. We don't want to overwhelm you with too many tasks as we build these weekends of action over the summer, but it never hurts to have voter registration forms in your pocket so that if you run into somebody that isn't registered while you're going out and trying to persuade swing voters on the harmfulness of the Trump agenda, that you can make sure that they're registered to vote. We know that as we're sort of thinking about the 2018 election, we have 2017 and 2018, that in Connecticut, we tend to go from about 1.8 million people voting in presidential elections down to about 1.2 million people voting in non-presidential elections. So a lot of that ground can be made up for through voter registration. Why? When somebody registers to vote, by and large, they vote in that first election. They might not vote in the second, and the third, and the fourth election, but when you register, you vote in that first election. So every registration that you're getting between now and 2017 and 2018 is almost a guaranteed turnout for that next election. So that's one of the things that we can work with you as you build this direct voter campaign this summer.
Speaking more about the direct voter campaign, for Madison, Connecticut, what would you consider a swing voter?
So listen, I think a swing voter is different in lots of different places, but we have a lot of data that we've collected over the years through what's called voter modeling. What we do is we go out and we ask questions of voters, demographic questions about their background, and then we ask them about what their voter preference is in an election. We have that data for the 2016 elections. And through that survey data, you can build a profile in Madison of what the swing voter looks like, right? Through that survey information, we can, through complicated algorithms, figure out that, okay, in Madison, swing voters are sort of this demographic, they live in this part of the town, and then we can build a voter contact model that goes after what we've identified as the typical swing voter. I'll be honest, the swing voters are going to look a little bit different now, so it might involve a little bit of guesswork, right? We're going to actually be talking to Republicans in a way that back in 2016 we might not have been talking to, because we know that there are a lot of Republicans in this state that are deeply uncomfortable about this agenda. So we'll take that voter model that we have left over from 2016, we'll match it together with a little good old-fashioned intuition, maybe work with you to get some local insight, and we'll come up with that set of voters that we think is most important to reach this summer.
Awesome. And sort of our final question, how do we increase college student turnout?
So what Fight Back Connecticut is ultimately about is about creating a sustainable, professional resistance movement that partners with all of you. You know, here's an admission of failure on behalf of somebody who's run for office a number of times here in Connecticut. We stand up these campaigns, me and Dick and Rosa and John and Joe and Jim, and then when the election's over, we tear them down again. Now the state party is still there, but you know, the state party on an off year only has a couple people working for it. And we suffered from that, the sort of peaks and valleys of full-time organizers here in Connecticut. And we know what happens when states invest in full-time organizing models. Take Nevada. In Nevada, Harry Reid, the former Senate Majority Leader, built a full-time permanent political structure that never disappeared. And one of the things it was doing constantly was organizing students, going onto campuses and doing voter registration drives, doing student activations, not just right before an election, but all year round. So what happened in Nevada in 2016? In 2016, Hillary Clinton won. They elected a Republican US Senator. They flipped 2 congressional seats from Republican to Democrat. They took control of both houses of the state legislature, and they passed an anti-gun violence referendum. Now, there's a couple other reasons for that in Nevada, but one of them is the fact that they built that permanent organization. That's what we're trying to do with Fight Back Connecticut. Nick is the first organizer on the ground, but we hope to build this out over time. So, to answer your question, we can be on college campuses and maybe even working with willing groups of high school students like we have here in Cheshire. Cheshire, we've got an awesome Young Democrats group, to build up sort of a permanent student activation system, one that doesn't just come alive during the campaign. And I'm spending, you know, my campaign money on this. Of course, it's your campaign money because you donated it to my campaign. But I'm the steward of it because you wrote the check and signed it over to friends of Chris Murphy. And whereas in the past, I hoarded all that money and I spent it on TV and organizers and mailings in the last months of the campaign cycle, I'm spending it now so that we can build this summer of action and then some of these other assets that can help build up this resistance movement. Nick, let me just make this last point. I want to make one thing crystal clear. You guys have already made a difference, and everything we're doing here is not seeking to replicate or substitute for all of the different actions you've taken. We've got a group of activists here that have been meeting every Sunday, some of which are in this room right here. And I want them to continue coming up with those actions and continue engaging in those actions. We hope you'll join with us on this action, on the summer action plan. We think this is supplemental to a lot of what we're doing. We think we can build this in a really targeted way that'll make a difference electorally. But we want everybody to continue doing what you've been doing, what you have been doing, and join us as well. If you want to substitute this for some of the things you might have had planned, great. That's your decision because you, I think, have been incredibly impactful already. We're the only state doing this, but I have a feeling we're going to have something really special to deliver to people, and this might be something that can be replicated all across the country.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Chris. This is going to be a really, really great weekend of action, sort of planning session. So if you're joining us at a launch event across the state, your host is going to help sort of lead this conversation to come with those dates of, when are we having this, who's hosting that, so who is signing up for which events. So that's sort of what's next. If you're joining us online, go ahead and text the word FIGHT to 228466 to start planning your weekend of action right now. And of course, continue to use #FightBackCT. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining us. Around the state, more than 2,000 people signed up, more than 80 events. And we're very, very excited to be here with you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.